Hi there, welcome to episode 98 of The Art of Business English. Now, it's Andrew Ambrosius here again, and today I have got another little episode for you on how to use like formal expression or some formal expressions that you can use during your next business meeting, okay? So let's just do a little introduction. It's been great to get all your feedback and responses from some of the previous episodes that I've put out, so thank you there. We've also had a nice response to our Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale. And if you are listening to this podcast, then unfortunately that has passed, but you never know. Could be some more opportunities in the future for you to pick up some of our courses at super cheap prices. Anyway, let's just move on a little bit to what we'll be covering today. And basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to give you about 10 formal words or expressions that you can use in your next business meeting. So I'll give you the expression, then I'll tell you what is the meaning in more like colloquial or less formal language. And in the third part, I'll give you some sentences or some examples so that you really understand how to put these expressions into use in different contexts. Okay, so it does depend on what type of meeting you're having. It does depend on the people who are at that meeting. But yeah, sometimes it's more important to have or to use formal expressions in business. Remember, formal expressions are great depending on your audience. They can make you sound a lot more professional or smarter in some cases. So they're very interesting to have. And some people are very used to being addressed in a certain way. So if you come across as too informal, it could be seen as a bit of a lack of respect, or could mean sometimes informal language shows that you're not well educated, so you need to be careful being too informal at times. So it's important to have a grasp of some more formal expressions, and at the end of the day, really they're not that difficult. You just need to know the synonyms for more common expressions that we would probably use on a daily basis. Okay, so let's start this episode by looking at formal words for meetings. Okay, so the first one on our list today is acquire. So acquire, it's a verb. So to acquire. Basically, to acquire something means to get something. So, get is very common and very informal. It's not a formal verb, to get. Okay. However, acquire is a more formal way of saying get. Okay. So an example of acquire in use could be: we will need to increase our online marketing budget if we are to acquire more qualified leads. We will need to increase our online marketing budget if we are to acquire more qualified leads. So you can see here I'm using acquire leads instead of get leads. Okay, so acquire is like obtain as well. So yeah, much more formal than saying to get. Okay. The next word on our list is cease. So to cease, to cease doing something. So it's generally followed by a gerund. So when we cease doing something, it means to stop. Okay. So stop is very easy. It's very common and less formal than cease. Cease is more of a legal term as well. That's why we have a cease and desist order, which is something which we would commonly hear in legal type terminology. Cease and desist means stop doing something. Okay, so cease is also a great word if you want to sound more formal. So an example sentence would be: we must cease spending so much, or we could face a liquidity crisis. So we must cease spending so much, or we could face a liquidity crisis. So here, you're using cease to stop instead of stop for spending money. If you cease spending so much money, then you're saying we should stop spending so much money. And just remember that cease as well as stop are generally followed by gerund because they mean, when they're followed by gerund, to stop doing something. Okay, when you follow stop by to infinitive, so stop to do, it means you stop one thing to do another thing. Whereas when you say stop doing something, it just means you stop doing that thing. Okay, so that's the difference between stop doing and stop to do. Okay, so let's look at the next formal word on our list, and that is at your convenience. So at your convenience is a little expression we can use. So if we say to someone, you can do something at your convenience, basically it's telling them that whenever they can, or they can do it when they can. So, you could say, could you do this at your earliest convenience, is more polite than saying, or more formal even, to say, well, you can do it whenever you can. Okay? I mean, it's more common probably to say, can you do this whenever you get time? However, it's nice to say at your earliest convenience. We could obviously use this expression at your convenience as well in formal letters or emails. Okay, so an example sentence here could be, I would like you to send me a report on this matter at your earliest convenience. So basically, I would like you to send me a report on this matter at your earliest convenience means when you can, or when you have time, could you please send me the report? Okay, so it's a nice polite way to ask someone to do something for you, but you're not pressuring them, and you're asking them to do it when they have time. Okay, so at your convenience or at your earliest convenience is a way to ask people to do something for you in a polite way without pressuring them. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next word. The next word on our list is evident. Okay, evident. Now, evident means basically that something is obvious or it's clear. Okay, it's evident. Okay, so you could say it's obvious. Okay, the synonym here is obvious. So if something is evident, it is obvious to you. Okay, so in this case, we could use an example sentence. For example, is, it has become evident to me that we should be paying more attention to our competitors if we are to stay in the game. So again, it has become evident to me that we should be paying more attention to our competitors if we are to stay in the game. So it's become obvious, this due to the circumstances, or because of the circumstances that have arisen, you think now, or it's obvious to you now, or it's evident to you now that you need to be keeping an eye on your competitors if you are to remain competitive yourself. Okay, to stay in the game really means to continue in business and continue being competitive in the marketplace. So it's another interesting little word or phrasal verb to add, or expression to add. So let's move on to another word, and the next word on our list is, or expression in this case, is in view of. So in view of is a great linking expression, and you can use it to introduce an idea. And the synonym, or the less common, or the more common would be all in all. Okay, all in all. So in view of is more formal, and all in all is more common and less formal. Okay, so let me give you an example sentence so you can understand it in context. In view of the disappointing sales figures, I feel we need to rethink our approach to the next quarter's sales strategy. So again, in view of the disappointing sales figures, I feel we need to rethink our approach to the next quarter's sales strategy. So in view of means if we consider, or if we have a look at everything, then we can see that because of the sales figures being so disappointing or not good, we will need to modify, adjust, or revisit our sales strategy for the next quarter. So in view of is a nice way to say if we considering. Okay, let's look at the next word on our list, which is to note something down. So to note something down is a formal expression in English, which basically means you write something on a piece of paper. And to note something down means you take notes. Okay, so the more informal expression here would be jot down, to jot down, or to jot something down. Okay, so the formal one is to note something down, and the less formal expression is to jot down. Now, I'll give you an example sentence here. I'll just note that last point down, and when I have time, I will send you a more detailed response. Now, so again, sorry, I'll just note that last point down, and when I have time, I will send you a more detailed response. So as I was with this point, it's really interesting to use to note something down, because sometimes you don't have all the answers, or maybe the question that was asked is not really relevant to the context or the agenda of the meeting. So you take a note, or you jot something down, or you note something down, and then you can come back to that person later. So to note something down is a good expression, especially if you really would like to address that issue later and move on with the meeting. So I encourage you to use that in this type of situation. Okay, right. Next one is purchase. So, I mean, many of you have probably heard of the word or the verb to purchase. Now, to purchase is pretty basic. It's pretty straightforward. It's the synonym or less formal expression would be to buy. Okay, so when we buy something, we can purchase something or we can buy something. To buy an object or to buy an item was maybe a bit more personal. I buy something. But we would say in a business context, the company purchased something. Okay, the company does buy things, but purchase sounds a bit better. It's like a little bit like the difference between customer and client. Client is a little bit more formal than customer. So let me give you an example of a sentence with purchase. I would like a report on our inventory after the last round of purchases. We need up-to-date records. So one more time. I would like a report on our inventory after the last round of purchases. We need up-to-date records. So here, you can see that we've made some purchases. This has therefore modified the inventory or the stock. So therefore, you or the manager of the meeting has asked for a report so that the inventory list is up to date. So up to date means that it is current, or al día. If you were saying it in Spanish, it would be al día or actualizado. Okay, so that's how we can use purchase. Remember, purchase is a little bit more formal than buy, and similar to client or customer. They both mean the same thing, but client is a bit more formal than customer. Let's look then at the next word, which is, or it's an expression, sorry, it's in reference to. So in reference to. So the synonym for in reference to would be based on or regarding. Okay, so based on or regarding or considering. So in reference to means based on something, or in reference to something, or regarding something. So let me demonstrate this with an expression or a sentence, example sentence for you. In reference to the point you mentioned earlier, so considering or regarding the point you mentioned earlier, remember this is in the context of a meeting, so the person mentioned something or they said something earlier. So in reference to the point you mentioned earlier, I feel we could deliver the project on time if we were allocated more resources. So one more time, in reference to the point you mentioned earlier, I feel we could deliver the project on time if we were allocated more resources. So here you can see I've changed, the language is quite formal. You're saying I feel instead of I think, and deliver the project on time instead of finish the project on time. And, if we were allocated more resources. So allocated is more formal than to be given. So this is a passive as well. Passive, we were allocated. The less formal would be if we were given. Okay? So allocated is more formal than given. So you can see that once you start using formal language, you can modify the whole sentence or the whole paragraph or the whole structure. So in reference to, and then some other extra words thrown in there for you. Let's look then at the next one, which is to state. Now, to state is quite simple. It means to say. Okay, so to state something is more formal than just to say something. All right, so I'll give you an example of this sentence in use. So, could everyone please state their preference for the time and date of the next meeting? So, could everyone please state their preference for the time and date of the next meeting? So if you state your preference, it means that you are to say or tell or give us your preference orally. Okay, so to state something generally is orally. Okay, so could everyone please state their preference for the time and date of the next meeting? All right then, let's look at the next one. Now the next one is regret plus infinitive. So infinitive is with to go, to run, to swim, or regret with gerund. Now, the reason why I've got two, I'm explaining two terminations or two structures that follow regret is because regret has different meanings depending on if it is followed by an infinitive or if it's followed by a gerund. And I'll explain that now, but just to give you this synonym or the less formal expression, that is basically to say sorry. Okay, so to regret something is you're sorry for it, or you're sorry to do it, or you're sorry for having done it in the past. So that's basically the difference between regret plus infinitive and regret plus gerund. Regret plus infinitive is now and in the present. So I'll give you an example. I regret to inform everyone. Now, it means now. I regret to inform, so to inform is the infinitive. I regret to inform everyone that we have to make some cuts to the team and we will be asking some of you to leave the company. So basically you can see the meaning here. Like the person says, I regret to inform you or inform everyone. This is mean I'm sorry, I feel bad to tell you this. And when it's infinitive, it means I regret to tell you now, and this will have an impact now and into the future. Okay, so regret plus infinitive is now and in the future. I'm sorry to tell you this now, and I'm sorry for what's going to happen as a result in the future. So in this case, some people are going to lose their jobs. So I regret to inform everyone that we have to make some cuts. Cuts are recortes, no? So you need to lower costs. We need to make some cuts to the team, and we will be asking some of you to leave the company. Now, that is regret now in the present, and then with an impact or an outcome in the future. But if we follow regret with a gerund, a verb with gerund, so a verb with ing, then it changes the meaning. So I'll just give you the sentence here. I regret making that decision now. In hindsight, it was not very well thought out. So I regret making that decision now. So when did you make the decision? You made the decision in the past, but you regret the outcome of it now. So regret plus gerund means you regret doing or regret having done something in the past. You regret it now, okay? But the decision or the thing that you did was actually done in the past. Okay, so it's very important that when it's gerund, you're regretting something that happened in the past. Okay, so I regret making that decision now. So you made a decision, you regret it now, but the decision was made in the past. Okay, and in hindsight, okay, hindsight means with better understanding of the situation, it was not very well thought out. So to be not very well thought out means you didn't really think through the issue before you made the decision. Okay, so regret with gerund means you regret something now in the present, but you did the thing that you regret, you did in the past. Okay, so that's a little difference between regret with infinitive or regret with gerund. And that is the last word or formal expression on my list for today's podcast episode and lesson. So that is it, my friends. Final thoughts from me. Well, as you can see, there are lots of little words that you can use. I think it's important for you to know that these words are all words that are basically categorized as B2 level. Now, B2 is the European framework for understanding like the levels of English or all languages. So B2 is your first certificate level, so your Cambridge first certificate level, and or if it's more international, it would be IELTS, an IELTS 6 or an IELTS 6.5. Okay, so those of you who understand Cambridge exams, basically these words are upper intermediate. Okay, so B2 is upper intermediate level. So these types of expressions should be used, or you should feel comfortable if you're an intermediate to upper intermediate speaker of English. If you are learning English, then if you're intermediate level, which is B1, then you should start to learn these and try and incorporate them, because they'll help you advance to the next level. B2 level, it means you're quite capable of speaking English. You should be quite comfortable speaking English. And, I think that these expressions will just help you have a little bit more range of vocabulary and make you sound a little bit more formal. Remember, it's really important to not only be able to speak English, but really to know when is the right time to use specific expressions and when is the right time to be less formal or more formal. And that's really relating back to your emotional intelligence and not just your IQ, your intelligence, your brain capacity. Okay, so just try and understand them within the context. Go back, review the list, and just adopt one or two at a time. And you don't have to limit their use to a meeting. Everything I've put here is within the context of a meeting. However, to practice them, you could start putting them into some of your formal emails, or try and use them in your next presentation, and of course use them in your next meeting. But yeah, these are B2 level expressions, so they should be pretty easy for most people to start using and adopting in their vocabulary. So that's it then, my friends. I hope you've really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you're enjoying the series on meetings. As I mentioned in previous episodes, I'll be putting together a meetings course, and I'll open that up after the new year. I'm heading to Australia in the next 2 weeks. That's very exciting. So I will probably be broadcasting live from back home, and stay tuned for some of the upcoming Christmas episodes that we've got coming. Anyway, that's it from me, people. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you're enjoying the series, and if you could be so kind as to share the Art of Business English podcast with your friends, your colleagues, and or your audience, if you do have an audience, that would be great. I really appreciate it. And if you have time, head over to iTunes or Spotify or wherever and drop me a 5-star review. I'd really appreciate it. Okay then, fans and family, take care, and I'll see you all next week. Take care. Bye for now.